Hello there, Councillor Doug Ford.
How you doing, John?
Good, how are you?
Fantastic.
You seem to be in the news again.
Oh, I don't know. I can't keep myself out of trouble.
All right. Let's deal with Margaret Atwood first. I mean, I would hope that, because people are interpreting on the text messages we get here and so forth, that you're being sort of dismissive or rude about somebody who is a very well-known Canadian. And you did say she was a good author, and I presume that you would agree that she's entitled to have her opinion on these things and to express them as she wishes.
That's correct, John. And this isn't about libraries or high-profile writers. It's about one thing and one thing only, the almost $800 million budget shortfall we're facing as a city. I think everyone is missing the point. Whether I'd recognize Margaret Atwood walking down the street or not has nothing to do with the fact that there are libraries all over the city that are being underutilized. And I'm sure she's a lovely lady, and I have no interest in offending her. But the fact of the matter is, she isn't down here reading through the budgets and making the tough choices that the people of Toronto elected us to do.
All right, I'd like to get clear on the issue of substance, which is about, in this case, libraries, and then it could be extended to a number of other areas. Mm-hmm. I think I'm right in saying that neither you nor anybody else that I've seen has ever advocated the closure of all libraries or, for example, the suspension of all arts funding. You've merely said, look, we better put some of this on the table to see if there are some changes we could make to help with this budget problem.
You're 100% correct. Are we saying close down all the libraries and burn all the books? No. Saying that is nothing more than cheap scare tactics from the left. What we want to do with a library is the same thing that we're doing across the entire city, and look at the service that we're providing and go through it line item by line item. And I'd like to compliment the head of libraries, Jane Piper. She's my favorite bureaucrat. She came into my office. We sat down a few months ago, and she said, Doug, I'm going to get a black belt. I'm going to look at lean systems throughout the library. And that's all I needed to hear. Jane's doing a wonderful job. She understands the situation we're in, and we just want to find some cost savings and run it more efficiently, and there's nothing wrong with asking for that.
Well, and because I've been a businessman, as you are, and because I guess I look at these things and I say all the time they're neither black nor white, I believe it is possible, and I want you to tell me your view, that you could, for example, I'll pick a number of 10%, because that's a number that's popular out there in terms of budget reductions, mm-hmm. that you could have a library system with 89 branches instead of 99 and actually have better service at the end of that. I believe that's possible. Do you?
I agree 100%. I use my ward as an example. I have libraries approximately every 2.5 kilometers, maybe 3 kilometers in driving distance, and there's one library that's in an industrial area that I drive by every single day, and it's in a little strip mall that no one knows it's even there.
Is it the Northern Elms Library?
I believe so. It's right on the corner of Rexdale and Kipling, right in the bang center in an industrial area.
Well, you're good friends at the Toronto Star. They have published a bunch of statistics about that branch. I'm assuming it's the same one. Mm-hmm. And they, for example, say, according to the library board or whoever, that it has 2,746 active users. How many people are in your ward in total, like 100,000?
Yeah, approximately about 65,000, but 2,700 people, active users. I think that's great, but they can also go 2 kilometers down the road to Richview, which is a spectacular library, or go up to Albion Road. There's another library, or along Rexdale Boulevard.
Well, that sort of was the point of my earlier question. It's possible, I suppose, if you took the overhead, the hydro bill, and I'm not advocating this, I'm really saying when people are dumping on you and the city government and the mayor for even examining these things, I believe it is possible you could end up with a much better overall library service if you offloaded the hydro bill and the upkeep and the whatnot, and some of the staff perhaps, and you supplemented a bit of the staff at the one you mentioned on Richview. You could have a much better library offering for the very same people there. I think it's possible. We've got Doug Ford back in the news. If it isn't one, it's the other. What does Margaret Atwood call them? I love
these guys.
She calls them, I just keep forgetting of it, she calls them twin Ford brothers, saying twin Ford mare, she calls them. So she speaks to them about them as one, Rob and Doug. Anyway, today, Doug, Margaret Atwood was after them about...
Who's Margaret Atwood?
she was after them about not closing libraries, and so he sort of struck back and said 1% of the people maybe in his ward, if she walked through the ward, would know who she was. And he then said, well, he thought she was a fine author, and so on and so on. But we got into a discussion. He, for example, pointed to one of the 3 branches in his ward, which is not too far from where you used to live. And he said it was pretty small. It was kind of in this industrial plaza. And, isn't that one we could look at closing and maybe make the other 2 in the ward better, and so on and so on? You might even call that strategy into question as something that really is future-oriented.
Yeah, I think it's a great strategy. Start shutting them all down. What is a book? What is a library? Who's going to print the books in the future that you're going to put in libraries? I just had an argument with a local politician here in Orange County. We were bragging about how they'd spent millions on this, what's going to be the biggest library that Orange County has ever seen. And I said, where are you going to get the books to put in it? What do you mean? Where are you going to get the physical books to put in a library? Get into the future. Get into the present. Books will not exist in the future. Has anyone heard of Borders? Massive bookstore, just gone bankrupt here in the United States.
True.
Selling everything off. The reality is the library is a concept where you can have access to read material free. Yes, I think the concept still exists. The exciting thing is it doesn't have to take up space like it used to. You don't have to spend the money. You don't have to cut down the trees. In the future, a library will be a place where you go online. And for people who don't have computers, a small kiosk in a community where you can download for 3 days a book to read. And then in 3 days, it vanishes from whatever device you're reading it on, and you got to read it anyway. That's what a library is going to become. We don't need brick and mortar buildings anymore for libraries. This is such ancient thinking. Now, a lot of those books won't be digitized for years, so we're going to need physical libraries for a while longer, but we don't need as many as we have, and because people go online now. Kids, how many kids do you think still go to libraries? Come on.
Yeah,
we need programs to get iPads into the hands of people who can't afford them so that they can the kids can access this stuff in the schools. We don't need buildings for this. The Ford brothers are absolutely right on this. If you're looking for savings, let's get rid of outdated technologies and ideas.
And I was just going to say that if you look at how the price of technology is coming down, if you remember, we're old enough, both of us, to remember that when the first calculators came out, they were really expensive and really cumbersome, and nobody had them.
Remember Texas Instruments, and you had to run a little piece of paper through that would program it to do a certain kind of calculation?
Yeah, and you can now get a calculator literally for $1. You can go and buy one that has probably more functionality than the old one. So I believe the same will happen with Kobos and Kindles and so on, such that you'll be able to get for a very inexpensive price. Look at the price of plasma TVs and how that's come down in the last 5 years. I mean, you'll be able to get an electronic book reader which has wireless access to one of those sites you're talking about, which it just means over time, you're right. I mean, those buildings, even for the purpose of accessing the kiosk you talked about, will no longer be as necessary, if at all.
Yeah, you might not even eventually need any kind of physical location, but the one you will have will be smaller. Go to the good public libraries anywhere in North America these days. More and more you access things online when you go there. But I've always thought it was unnecessary and redundant that you go to a library to listen to CDs, or it used to be, you could take out a vinyl record and stuff. That's not what a library's purpose should be. Yes, people need access to information. I like the concept of the library, but as it stands now, it's a very old-fashioned idea. Ask anyone. Would you invest money right now in a chain of bookstores, John?
No.
So why would we publicly invest in the same thing?
Well, it's not a matter of whether we invest more. It's a matter, though, of whether we cut back. And look, I was the one that posed the question to Doug Ford, and he answered yes, that you could have a library system that, in fact, was better with fewer branches today. You could provide better service. I mean, just because something's bigger and has more branches doesn't mean it's better.
Right. And, in fact, I would rather hear politicians say, the exciting thing is we're trying to get information into people's hands that they don't have to pay, people that can't afford it. We're trying to find systems where we can give them an e-reader and that they can borrow a book for a few days online and have access to it. There are a lot of, when you first get your iPad, I'm sure you did this too, you go online, you download. The first thing you do is get all the free stuff, right? The complete works of William Shakespeare and all of that kind of stuff is available online right now, free. I mean, the reality is, boy, I got pushback when I talked about this on my show a couple of weeks ago, by the way, from a lot of old people who don't get the point because they haven't made the transition yet. But you literally will have trouble finding anyone who's going to publish hardcover paper books.
Well, yeah,
in a
because
few
the
years
number of
down the
people who
road.
buy them, it won't be worthwhile because it's the first book that costs all the money to roll off the press and every other one. But if very few people are buying the hardcover books, then it's not going to be worth it to do it.
Yeah, I mean, look at the stats on it. Ask Borders.
Yeah.
What
No,
happened
it's
with
exactly right. And look, it's perhaps a subject for another day, but I think it is part of a syndrome that is affecting both countries where people sort of know these changes are coming. They know we have to make some efficiencies, and they know they don't want to pay higher taxes, but they're not prepared to make any of the hard choices that go with any of that. They want to have everything, keep everything they've got, not pay any more, and it just doesn't work that way, and some of it doesn't even make sense.